Ashlyn Harris and Sophia Bush. The seductive love story that rocked Hollywood top facts. There are love stories you expect. And then there are the ones that knock the air out of you. The ones that feel too raw, too unexpected, too magnetic to be anything but destiny. When Sophia Bush and Ashlyn Harris were first spotted together, no one saw it coming. But maybe that's what made it so powerful. Two women from totally different worlds, one Hollywood royalty, the other a soccer icon, falling into each other's orbit like it was always meant to happen. This wasn't just about love. It was about timing, about healing, about two people discovering something electric just beneath the surface of fame, friendship, and the pain of past heartbreaks. What they shared wasn't just private. It was sacred. And as the world speculated, whispered, and obsessed, they quietly built something the cameras could never fully capture. You're watching Top Facts, where we tell the untold stories behind Hollywood's most complicated romances. Today we're diving deep into the secretive, passionate, and wildly talked about connection between Sophia Bush and Ashlyn Harris. You think you know their story? We promise you've only seen the surface. When Sophia Bush walked onto our screens as Brooke Davis on One Tree Hill, she wasn't just playing a role, she was becoming an icon. Smart, sexy, fearless, Sophia quickly became Hollywood's girl next door with an edge. Off-screen, though, her love life was more complicated. From a high-profile marriage and divorce with Chad Michael Murray to later romances that played out in the media, Sophia was no stranger to heartbreak, or to keeping her guard up. Ashlyn Harris, on the other hand, made her name on the field. A fierce goalkeeper, world champion, and LGBTQ+ advocate, Ashlyn had always lived boldly, both in her athleticism and her personal truth. She was married to fellow soccer star Ali Krieger, and together they were a power couple, beautiful, influential, seemingly unshakable. But the thing about perfect images? They sometimes hide the most fragile truths, and 2023, both women's lives took a sharp turn. Sophia shocked fans when she filed for divorce from Grant Hughes just 13 months into their marriage. The timing raised eyebrows, not just because of the short span, but because of what came next. Ashlyn Harris filed for divorce from Ali Krieger just weeks later. And suddenly, the rumors weren't just whispers, they were thunder. Sophia and Ashlyn were spotted together at fashion events, in casual LA cafes, in quiet moments that weren't staged for paparazzi but captured anyway. To some, it looked like two friends leaning on each other through heartbreak. But for others, those who saw the way they looked at each other, the way their bodies gravitated without thinking, it was clear. This wasn't just support. It was something far more intimate. What drew them together? Sources close to the pair say it started with long conversations, shared wounds. Sophia, always fiercely independent, had found someone who wasn't intimidated by her strength. Ashlyn, whose life had been structured around the discipline of sport and public perfection, was finally opening up in a way she hadn't before. They made each other laugh in quiet rooms. They stayed up too late talking about dreams they had buried. And slowly, something undeniable bloomed. But this wasn't a fairy tale. Not behind the scenes. The backlash was swift and brutal. Some accused them of moving on too fast. Others claimed betrayal, especially after Ashlyn's ex-wife Ali posted cryptic messages about being blindsided. The narrative spun fast. Cheaters, homewreckers, scandalmakers. But behind the noise was a truth only they knew. They weren't chasing attention. They were chasing peace. Insiders say Ashlyn had been struggling in her marriage long before the headlines broke. That she felt like she was living in a glass box. Admired but not truly seen. With Sophia, things were different. There was a softness, a curiosity, a thrill in not having to explain herself. And for Sophia? After years of dating men who underestimated her fire, she found someone who matched it. Their chemistry wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. It was in the way Sophia reached for Ashlyn's hand when she thought no one was looking. In the way Ashlyn rested her palm on the small of Sophia's back at industry events. In the way they disappeared from the spotlight for days at a time, only to reappear glowing, unbothered, and impossibly in sync. One story goes that they escaped to a quiet beach in Mexico. No entourage, no cameras, just them. Locals said they rented a tiny villa on the cliffs, spent days walking barefoot on the sand, cooking together, dancing in the kitchen with the windows open. It was the kind of intimacy that can't be faked. A rhythm that felt both new and ancient, like two souls finally finding their home. Still, the questions wouldn't stop. Were they official? Were they moving too fast? Was it real? Sophia, always private about her personal life, stayed silent. But her smile changed. It wasn't performative. It was free. And Ashlyn? She looked lighter. As if something heavy had finally been put down. They started showing up to events together, subtly but unmistakably close. At Paris Fashion Week, they sat side by side, whispering between shows. At a charity gala, Ashlyn was seen brushing a strand of hair behind Sophia's ear. Small moments, but they told a bigger story. And the people who knew them best said the same thing. They were good for each other. But not everyone was ready to accept their love. The media continued to spin rumors. Some suggested their relationship had overlapped with their marriages. Others painted Sophia as the seductress, Ashlyn as the runaway. But the truth, as always, was far more complicated. They weren't perfect. They had messy pasts. But what they were building, it was intentional. It was sacred. There were moments of tension, of course. Times when the pressure from the outside world got too loud. When fans dissected every move looking for cracks. When exes made noise in the press. But through it all, Sophia and Ashlyn held their ground. They weren't trying to be a power couple. They were just trying to be themselves. One night, they were spotted leaving a rooftop dinner in New York. No red carpet, no paparazzi invite. Just two women wrapped in each other's warmth, sharing laughter under city lights. And the look on their faces, it wasn't scandal. It was joy. People forget that before the headlines they were just human. Two people who had spent years giving pieces of themselves to others, finally choosing to give something to each other. In the quiet, in the real. There were whispers that they had moved in together, that they were talking about the future, that they were, at last, in a place where love didn't feel like survival, it felt like sanctuary. Sophia once said in an interview that she didn't want a love that made sense on paper. She wanted the kind that made her soul feel alive. And maybe, just maybe, Ashlyn is the first person who gave her that. And Ashlyn? She'd spent her whole life defending the goal. But with Sophia, she let herself be open, vulnerable. So what happens next? Maybe they keep flying under the radar. Maybe they build a quiet empire together. Maybe they write a new kind of love story. One that isn't about fame or approval but about truth. About two women finding each other in the wreckage and choosing to rise together in a world obsessed with drama. Their love is a kind of rebellion. It's messy, yes, but it's also deeply romantic, deeply rooted, and deeply earned. Because love isn't about timelines. It's about connection. About choosing the person who sees you, not just your image, not your past, but your essence. And that's what Sophia Bush and Ashlyn Harris have. A connection that defies expectation. A fire that refuses to burn out. A story still being written. You've just watched Top Facts. If this story moved you the way it moved millions, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories you won't find anywhere else. Because some love stories aren't made for the spotlight, they're made to set your heart on fire.